Hey guys, how's it going? This is Nat Nader and welcome back to your weekly dose of Creepypasta. Quick update into my life just before we get going. After almost a year on the job hunt, I finally found some work, in quotations. I've been accepted to train as a captioner via remote work, so that's really nice. It's definitely difficult, but a challenge that I will hopefully rise to meet. I'll leave that there just to keep it short. I won't delay anything. The December round for Patreon has come in, ho ho ho, so let's all give thanks to those lovely people who went out of their way. Shoutouts as always to the Disciples, Tiffany, Backer Puff, Subscribe SoundCloud, Teddy Dog, Vlad Dracula, Backwards D-Dog, Alhazred, Michelle Golden, and Vera Ohio. Thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoy the story. Now as always, turn out the lights, get comfortable, and let the story begin. Patient 1970, Log 4, Dr. Evans, 11:23 a.m. Wednesday. Patient shows further signs of deterioration. MRI scans show that brain matter shows no sign of damage. However, the actual electrical currents are continually changing and decreasing. I've been caring for this 30-year-old man for about a month now, yet it seems like years. He came in with very little wrong. He just constantly talked about his father. His wife was scared about him becoming violent or losing his mind at the death of his father 2 years prior. But while in our care, he's shown no signs of violence. What he has shown is immaturity, to a level expected of a teenager. He constantly hits on nurses or assistants half his age, as if he were trying to pick up an older woman. This is a considerable change from when he was enrolled here. He was at that time simply worried that his father wouldn't forgive him. Considerable sentiment, given it is well documented that he and his father had a tenuous relationship. The worry really came from the fact that whenever you tried to talk with him about his father, or ask him about what he was saying about him, he would look at you dazed. At this time, I feel it may be a related dementia to his father, as his father died in a tragic accident after losing his mind, suffering from both Alzheimer's and paranoia. The strained relationship between father and son led to the son burning all of his father's photos shortly before his death, and a proclaimed irrational fear of digital photography leaves me guessing at the man's identity. The patient has not recognized his wife in over a week, asking her who she is and telling her to buzz off, as she was impeding his, quote, hunt for Tang. He's also not recognized that she has stopped visiting. It seems the deterioration is progressing in new ways. For now, we can only continue to test him and hope his uncle can straighten him out. Patient 2354, Log 1, Dr. Evans, 10:27 p.m., Saturday. I hate late-night patients. I also hate when a person enrolls themselves due to self-paranoia, but policy states that we must accept any patient till we run out of room. Personal notes aside, a young woman came into the ward about 4 hours ago. She claimed she had been enjoying the evening air near a local park. She'd just finished babysitting for a friend and was now enjoying the sound of late-night child's play. She had been desiring a kid for a while now, but has been single for the past 2 years. As she sat, she noticed a person in a light jacket and jeans. Considering the fall weather we'd been having, this was reasonable. She changes her position to sit next to this person and attempts to start a conversation. The person she now identified as a man simply nodded his head at her attempts at conversation, but made no attempts to reply. When some young children came up to them, the patient insists neither of them called the children over for some reason. The man looked around, then pulled something out of his pocket. Apologies for the break. The patient was demanding she be allowed to see her father and was causing a ruckus. Anyway, what the man pulled out appeared to be a small bag of candy. The patient was able to identify black licorice from the scent. When the children's parents appeared to take their children home, the man offered some candy to the parents. At this point, the patient assumed the man was a mute, as he still never said a word. The parents were rightfully wary of a strange mute man offering candy for children. As if to deny their suspicions, he offered the patient a piece of candy. Loving black licorice, she accepted without question, chewing and swallowing the small piece of gummy candy in seconds. This seemed to appease the two parents, and they allowed their children to have each a single piece of candy before leaving. The patient's fear comes from what happened next. Not a minute after the parents and children were out of sight, leaving the park empty, outside of the patient and the man turned to her and pressed his forehead to hers. She was so off-put, she jumped away, much to the dismay of the man. Then she said she lost control of herself and bowed in apology, even though all of her instincts said to run away from him. The man simply stood and returned the bow, then walked off smiling. The patient chose to enroll herself in our facilities out of fear she's losing her good sense, under the premises of accepting the piece of candy and apologizing for an unwanted and forward action. I don't see this patient staying more than a couple of days max to get required testing out of the way. Anyway, it's late and I'm going to bed. Patient 2354, Log 2, Dr. Evans, 12 p.m. Thursday. No new patients have left me with time to analyze those already under my care. I've decided to do these reports at a more reasonable time, since I almost fell asleep at my desk writing the last one for patient 980. Now, I have a cup of coffee and a decent meal in my stomach. This patient worries me, to say the least. MRI scans show that her mental faculties are beginning to shut down at an alarming rate. It has been almost a week, and yet she has already deteriorated to the same level as patient 1970, who, at the time of this writing, is next on my to-do list. Both of them now act as if they were 5-year-olds. However, patient 2354 seems to be deteriorating at a faster pace than her predecessor. Whatever the cause of this anomaly is, both patients are now obsessing over their fathers, throwing tantrums, and crying when they don't get their way. The only refuge nurses have from these problems is 2 people, one for each patient. For this patient, it is a young man with constantly short, disheveled brown hair. He always wears a thin, white windbreaker and some jeans. In fact, he closely resembles the description of the man the patient described as giving her the candy. I passed this off as coincidence, since she seemed horrified that that man would even touch her. With this visitor, the patient is far calmer than when they are not. She also seems to be clinging to the man quite a lot. His ID states that he's her brother, and he's been writing his notes as he has a throat infection from his singing career. A story I looked into, it checks out. What worries me about this arrangement is that she does not identify this man as her brother, but as her father. This doesn't seem to bother him at all, but I find it odd that she only does this to this man. I've also noticed that 1970 also seems to calm down some around this man, though not nearly as much as he does to his patron father, who is an older man claiming to be his uncle, using sign language after losing his vocal cord functionality after a bout with thyroid cancer. Again, I checked the story, and with the ID given, it checks out. Patients are about to be let outside for a break, so I think I'll end this here. Personal note: Dr. Evans, 9 p.m. Saturday. This is a note more to myself than anyone. I've begun noticing some odd things with my patients. With no new ones to speak of, I've had plenty of time to look over 2354 and 1970's cases. I've noticed a few conjoining factors. First and foremost, there are the obvious factors of their obsession with their fathers, their patron fathers, as well as the deterioration process of their minds. But what I hadn't put together till just over an hour ago at dinner was that they both had similar experiences before showing these symptoms. 2354 had her man at a park, and 1970 and his wife bumped into an older man feeding pigeons and snacking on candy by the central fountain just next to the police station. The wife didn't take any when the man offered, due to her dislike of licorice, but her husband had. I will admit here and now, I'm starting to get an eerie feeling about these patients, because the best is yet to come. Both patients described the person who had given them licorice before in good detail. Their patron fathers also closely resemble the respective descriptions. I'm beginning to wonder if the people visiting my patients are in fact the cause of this issue. If so, how? To cause such a precise mental deterioration is beyond modern science, and doubtful future science could attempt such a feat. Also, it was brought to my attention a small detail of our visitor process is that we clear the pockets of anyone visiting a patient. This is to prevent bringing harm to the patient or helping them harm themselves. The guard in charge of security for the last few days had gone over my recent patient logs and felt it relevant to me that both of their patron fathers had small bags of licorice. Each bag was unique in shape and quantity held, but both were black licorice. He's been informed to confront the guests about these items and report directly to me his findings. In my 50 years of living, I've never been more worried for the well-being of humanity than I am at this moment. For in these moments, I question my own sanity, and the sanity of a world where being kind could well be deadly. Patient 1970, Log 6, Dr. Evans, 12 p.m. Monday. Patient 2354 is dead. She died over the weekend. Her brain simply stopped functioning. The nurses told me that she was hard at play with a large plastic car. Then she suddenly collapsed. Autopsy reports showed no signs of internal hemorrhaging or internal damage. Her brain just simply stopped. To make matters worse, patient 1970 is now in a coma. It seems that his 10-year age difference over his predecessor granted a slower hell than she was. My best assessment of this would be that the candy takes longer to take you down the longer you've been alive. I'd like to run tests on the candy to prove my theory, but the guard who was under my employ has wound up missing. Police have searched everywhere but can't find him. An investigation of his house found that his home was torn apart, as if a large dog had mauled everything. There were traces of the guard's blood, so they feared the worst. Seeing as my only patient is now incapacitated, it seems my logs will be much shorter. Patient 0. Log 1. Dr. Evans, 4 p.m. Friday. Patient 0. Named so as this one I caught early. Since I have had no patients under my care for the last 2 days, I'd been looking for another case like this. One with the candy, the father obsession, and hopefully another patron with some form of throat issue. I received a letter in my Dropbox yesterday. It was covered in blood and taped closed. There was no envelope, just 2 pieces of paper folded together and sealed to hold it closed. My guard came through in the end. Kind of. The letter read as follows. Dear Dr. Evans, under no circumstance should you trust the Father. Not only is he not human, he is not kind. I asked about the candy the next time he visited, shortly before one of the children passed into his everlasting care. His visage denied the existence of the gate. Those dumb little candies. So before I gave him his things, I took one of them to attempt to give to you. I think he knew when I did it, but couldn't do anything, lest he give himself away. No, not again. I can hear the crying of his children. Sounds of laughter turn to screams once you pass the gate. There is no way back once you cross. It's too late for me. But you can save others now. The candy is the cause. Never eat it. You will see him for the demon he truly is, and you will hear his true voice. I'm going to deliver this to you before he can claim me. I've already slipped a few times after he forced me to eat so many of them. His punishment for stealing a gate. I'm going quickly, but if he claims me, I won't be able to rest peacefully. Goodbye, Doctor. I wish you luck. The next morning, the guard was on the news. Dead. He'd been on top of a local hotel. He'd broken onto the roof and apparently attempted to jump. The report said no known cause could be determined, but I know the father got him first. Poor bastard. I'll make sure I can put what he taught me to use. Patient 0 is a charitable girl. She's well known at local soup kitchens and charity races, so it's no surprise that if someone offered her a piece of candy, she'd be willing to take it, even if only to help the other person feel good. She's only 15, so I can't tell how long she'll last before she dies, but I fear it isn't long. I hope she lasts long enough to get a visit. I haven't even bothered to question her because frankly, she's a dead girl. Oh dear. It seems the father has put me a little on edge. My humanity is failing, and I don't care. My goal is to get rid of the father. No more, no less. My goal is to help those who can be helped. When he comes, I'll be ready. Police report. Suicide. Officer Mac. Seems the victim has been suffering these last few weeks. He's been suffering from paranoia and was beginning to show signs of dementia. All the same, the poor old man took the leap. It wasn't too far of a fall given perspective, only 3 stories. He could have gone higher than jumping from his office window, but it did the trick. We investigated his office to see if we could find a cause. We found it all right. Right in the center of his desk, actually. Nice and neat in a tidy little envelope. Inside were 2 things, a letter and a drawing. The letter read as follows: Father has allowed me 2 things. The first is the right to write this letter. The second is a choice, to live with him in happiness, with my brothers and sisters, or die alone. The purpose of this letter is the same as any suicide note, to explain why. In my folders are files on 3 patients, 1970, 2354, and 0. All of whom their stories will explain my death. I was not ready. The father did appear, but in the form of the guard who had died to give me the info I needed. I had not been expecting anything so straightforward. Few people had watched the news that morning, with little or no time to do so. No one questioned his existence here, except me. When he showed up to visit his niece, I pulled him into my office. He was not pleased at this and screamed at me. The horror was that any sound that came from his mouth was simply a cacophony of children's laughter. I quickly apologized, and my politeness seemed to calm him down. I offered him a seat, and I sat in my chair. I stared at him in the eyes for what seemed like hours, but were simply 5 ticks of my old grandfather clock. I questioned in my mind how many people he had led astray. After our moment of silence, I told him I knew what he was and what he had done. He simply nodded and pulled a small bag out of his pocket. He offered me a piece of his licorice with a toothy smile on his face. The face of my friend. He was the beast that destroyed his current body's home. So in the enclosed space of my office, I didn't stand a chance to run. I made demands first. The rights I stated at the beginning. He simply nodded and held the piece of licorice closer to me. I nodded and grabbed it. I hesitated at first, before popping the candy in my mouth. It tasted no different than regular candy, but its effect was revolutionary. I saw Father for what he truly is, a beautiful creature, a creature far superior to humans. He is the one who has come to take what makes us destroy away from us. But he won't get me. My humanity is mine and mine alone. So after this is sealed, I'm gonna jump out the window Father has opened behind me, preparing for my choice. The image I've tucked in with this is what was given to me by the guard. It is truly beautiful to see Father for what he is. I've crossed the gate and must say farewell. I hope you never have to.